Hey everybody, it's Eric from EP Autos, going down the road here in the 2015 Lincoln Navigator. Have a quick little look around here. It's a big bus. They sell this thing in regular wheelbase and an L extended wheelbase version. It's the rival to the Cadillac Escalade, and when they first brought this vehicle out, Lincoln back in the 90s, it pretty much set the automotive market on its proverbial ear. It actually allowed Lincoln to outsell Cadillac for a couple of years until Cadillac, kind of like the Red Army during World War II, recovered, came back and brought out an even blingier SUV in the form of the Escalade, which is now the dominant SUV in this class, the supersized class. What's interesting about the Navigator now is Lincoln tries to rebuild itself. They did something really radical for this new model year. For the first time ever, a really big SUV, and this is about as big as they get, does not come with a V8 engine, doesn't even offer a V8 engine anymore. Ford is using their 3.5-liter turbocharged, twin turbocharged EcoBoost engine as the standard and only powertrain in the Navigator. And check it out, it makes 380 horsepower versus the previously standard 5.4-liter V8's 310 horsepower. Now, it's still not up to Escalade levels. The Cadillac comes standard with a 6.2-liter V8 that makes 420 horsepower. But the performance increase of the Navigator this year compared to last year's Navigator is huge. This thing now gets to 0 to 60 in about 6.6 or so seconds, depending on whether you go with the rear-wheel drive version or the optional four-wheel drive / all-wheel drive version. And that's right there with the Cadillac Escalade, which is still quicker. It gets there in about 6.4 seconds, but it's close. That 2/3 of a difference. If you put two cars on a drag strip, 0 to 60 wise, let them go at it, one would cross the finish line about half a car length or so ahead of the other, maybe. I mean, you literally could almost lean out the window and touch the other car on the side, so it's not that big of a difference. Interestingly, the Lincoln actually has a higher max tow rating. This thing can pull 9,000 pounds, despite not having a V8, whereas the Cadillac, with its big V8, much bigger V8, has a max rating of 8,300 pounds. Now, I don't know for sure that this is the case, but I'm wondering why the Cadillac's tow rating is lower, and my suspicion focuses on two things. The first thing is the Escalade's new transmission. For the 15 model year, they retired the formerly available 6-speed automatic, well, the formerly standard 6-speed automatic. They're now using an 8-speed automatic in the Escalade. I don't know that there are issues with it as far as strength, durability, reliability, but it may be the case that Cadillac is sort of hedging its bets and touting a lower max tow rating just because they want to wait and see, and they don't want to have a lot of warranty issues with the transmission. But it may not be the case. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. The other thing is that the Lincoln might have a stronger frame. The Expedition, and that's the vehicle that the Navigator is built on, the same basic vehicle, might just have a stronger frame than the Cadillac. Again, I don't know, but I do know that the two vehicles have a significantly different max tow rating, the Lincoln being rated to tow significantly more than the Cadillac. So there's that to take into account. Now, as much as I laud the power gain of the V6, and they've done it at least as they, what's the word I'm looking for? They've done it. Ford in general has been going with these smaller turbo engines, and so has the car industry, in order to get better gas mileage while retaining the performance level that people expect. That's the chief reason for going with these turbocharged engines. But the mileage gain isn't that great. The 3.5-liter Nav that I'm driving right now, it gets about 2 miles per gallon better in EPA testing versus last year's 5.4 V8. And it may well be that if you drive this thing with the boost up, the mileage is worse. I'm not sure. I'll let you know when I write my review, which should be up at on EP Autos within a day or so, whether the real-world gas mileage of this thing is close to or less than the EPA numbers. I'm trying not to dog it too much, just drive it the way somebody normally probably would. In any event, if you compare the gas mileage of this with the V6 to the gas mileage of the Escalade with the V8, again, the difference is not huge. You're talking maybe 2-3 miles per gallon. Really, really slight difference. And from a consumer point of view, it really doesn't matter. You know, you're not going to buy this over the Cadillac because you got 2 miles per gallon better. It just doesn't make any sense. So why does it make sense? It only makes sense in terms of fleet average fuel economy numbers. And that is something that matters to the car companies because of the federal government's corporate average fuel economy standards. So if you sell, say, 100,000 of these things in a year, and each one gets 2 miles per gallon better, that adds up and it reduces their liability for gas guzzler taxes. So that's the reason why they're going with these turbocharged engines. Is there a downside to you, the potential buyer of one of these things? Possibly. I want to be fair to Ford and to everybody else. They've done a lot of durability testing, and the engineering on these things is supposed to be very good. But just as a matter of historical context, turbo engines tend to not last as long as naturally aspirated engines do. It's just a historical fact. And it's also a fact that you're dealing with a more complex system here. This engine has 2 turbos and all the associated plumbing, all the associated electronics and sensors and so on. Whereas in the Cadillac, you know, you've basically got a simple V8 without turbos, without all the extra stuff. And those engines are a known thing. They're known to be durable. GM's LS series V8s, and that's what's in the Cadillac. Those things are, you know, 200,000 mile engines typically. They just go and go and go. So there's that to take into account. Otherwise, let's see. Let's push this back a little bit and take a look. The Navigator is a lot less expensive than the Escalade, and that's kind of something that they have to do. They don't have a whole lot of choice about it, because oops, that was a piggy. Piggy. Did you see the piggy? I had to take an interruption there as my V1 started to beep. Anyway, it's less expensive than the Navigator, obviously, because Lincoln is trying to recover and doesn't quite have the brand cachet that Cadillac does. Cadillac is able to sell Escalades probably at full MSRP or more, just because that's the go-to vehicle for a vehicle of this type, and Lincoln is trying to convince people to consider this model. I think it's a really nice truck with a few caveats. I like the general layout of this interior. I like the fact that I've got an uber Clover here. Look at me, I'm going 38 miles an hour. 38 miles an hour. Clover! And this is a 55 mile an hour road. Clover! Anyway, look at the manual buttons here. I like this, or knobs and buttons. I like that a lot better than what Cadillac is doing now. Cadillac has kind of a microwave oven control flat screen thing here that you have to swipe and tap, and it looks cool. The problem is that you have no sense of what you're touching. It's a flat screen, so there's no tactile sense. You kind of have to, like for example here, you know, touch AM and hope that your finger doesn't hit something else. So Ford sort of has a little bit of that here in this part of it, but this part of it for the climate control and the secondary control for the audio system is nicely familiar, old school tactile. I like that. Now take a look at the dash cluster. You may have seen this before. There's nothing wrong with it. Well, let me get around this Clover. This is just absurd. Here I am going 44 miles an hour, and Clover in his minivan. By the way, here's the EcoBoost taking off. You can feel the power of the EcoBoost. That was a pretty decent pass, wasn't it? All right, back to business. Look at the gauge cluster. This gauge cluster, it's perfectly attractive and it's perfectly functional. You can scroll through this. This is the tachometer now, but you can get it to do different things. Like, for example, you can get it to show you the four-wheel drive system will show you your angle up and down laterally and so on. But this gauge cluster is essentially the same gauge cluster that you'd find in a Ford Fusion. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know, at this price point, and this is a vehicle that starts in the 60s, goes up into the $70,000 range. It may be problematic for Ford to have a gauge cluster in a $60,000, $70,000 vehicle that's pretty much the same gauge cluster that you'd find in a $25,000 car, a Ford car. Again, I don't know, it's just my opinion. In the Cadillac, you've got a complete flat screen thing, very much of a piece with what you find in very high-end cars now, like the Mercedes S-Class. and it fits the vehicle. It fits the price point that vehicle is competitive in. So that's just one of the few things about this vehicle that that I have to point out to you that I think is potentially a liability for Ford. Otherwise, it's a very, very nice vehicle. The ride is really good for a big SUV. I think it's as good as the Cadillacs. The steering is a little bit vague, and then again, it's also the same thing in the Cadillac. These are really huge. It's hard to get a big bus like this to handle like a Corvette, but it's a really nice road trip car, highway car, and it's perfectly fine on secondary roads, including when this is a windy secondary road. Here I'm trucking along at 50 through these curves, and it's serene, smooth, composed. It doesn't feel top heavy. It's not lurchy. Anyway, more to come. The full review will be up at epautos.com soon. Thanks for listening, and we will catch up with you.